Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Sunday morning, the final session of the research methodology workshop. I'm grateful to all the speakers who have contributed to this workshop. We got only positive responses. I would inquire from most of the participants here as to what should be the topic of the next workshop sometime next year. Uh, So I would want to have your suggestions on what should be the next workshop topic. Now, today's topic is, of course, the randomized control trial, and our speaker is Professor Priyamvada. Without wasting any more of your time, I request Priyamvada to please go ahead and make her presentation. Priyamvada, all yours.
Today's topic is randomized crossover designs. This is something which is not very commonly employed in nephrology because probably the specialty is not really appropriate. The research question which we are trying to study in our specialty might not be appropriate in a crossover design. But this is pretty common, especially in pharmacodynamic studies and pharmacokinetic studies. And recently, yes, of course, a few crossover studies has been published in nephrology as well. Now, I'm trying to do a hypothetical experiment. I'm randomizing people into two groups. Group A is going to receive an intervention and group B is going to receive another intervention. And this is the intervention which group A and group B are going to receive. So I need some inputs from the house at this time about the feasibility of such a design. You can either type or you can unmute yourself and speak. So anybody would like to have a response? So I hope there are no responses. Calories not matched. Okay, no, we are just trying to see the taste. I'm sorry, I didn't tell what exactly I meant. Yeah, what I wanted to see is which one is the most preferred food by Indians. My plan is to have say 100 responses in group A, 100 respondents in group B, and see which food scores the highest in terms of taste. Yeah, now the problem with this sort of design is we are trying to compare a group score of group A versus group B. The problem is the taste is a complex perception and there might be individual characteristics which decides the taste of the taste perception. And where is the room for that individual perceptions in this experiment? I'm unable to, okay. So a better way of doing the same experiment is give the cheeseburger to one participant, allow a washout period, say a day or so, and do the experiment with idli at a later date. Here, the previous design which we have seen is something called a between subjects design. You are taking a group as a whole with not much of allowances to the variations in between the subjects. Whereas in a within subjects design, you are giving more importance to the variations among individual subjects and you are giving the experimental condition to the subject in a phased manner. So essentially, crossover trials are within subjects design, whereas parallel group trials are between subject design. When you select a within subjects design, the same individual undergo testing under the different conditions in the experiment. And what we are measuring is the change in same individual under the different experimental conditions. The advantage of a within subject design compared to a between subject design is that the error arising from the natural variations are minimized when we use a within subjects design. But here is one problem. My plan was to give idli to the participants, one group. I'm taking only one group. I give idli to the group. Then I allow for a washout period, say 1 day or 2 days, and I give burger to the same group after 2-3 days and ask them to give a score. But here some problems can arise. A few participants during the 2-day gap between idli and burger, they happened to listen to a health education program where somebody has advised them regarding the dangers of junk food. So it is possible that this sort of thing, which was actually outside my trial design, this is something which I didn't plan. People just happened to come across a health education program. So this change, which has happened in the in-between time, probably might have affected the scores when they tasted the burger. So this is the problem when we do this with a single arm. The results can be affected by some changes over time, which is obviously not under the control of the person who conducts the experiment. So in order to avoid that, we have to counterbalance. The counterbalancing is done in such a way that there is another group which receives the interventions in the exactly opposite sequence. So this is the basic design of a randomized crossover trial. Here, this is called AB or BA crossover, which means that there are two groups. One receives the intervention and one receives the control. And after a washout period, they reverse. Those who received intervention now goes to the control arm, and those who received control now goes to the intervention arm. And we are going to counterbalance this thing to account for the time, and we again randomize them, and this accounts for the temporal trends over time. Now coming to crossover design. So essentially the minimum crossover design, there will be two arms, and the both arms test all the conditions alibi in a different manner. So this will eliminate the in-between patient variances, and you need not really bother about some of the factors which you cannot account by randomization. Since the patient, the unit which undergoes intervention is the same, counterbalancing of the potential confounders happen. And this allows you to study individual patient responses, and the design is going to be much more efficient when compared to a parallel arm design. This needs much more lower sizes. For example, I wanted 100 responses for the idli arm and 100 responses for the burger arm in the parallel arm study. Now, if I'm doing it as a crossover trial, I would get the same 200 responses from 100 patients. So a minimum 50% reduction in the sample sizes will happen with a crossover design, but the actual reduction is going to be much more higher. I will come to that towards the end of the talk. And another thing is your sample size is going to be reduced. So it is easy to recruit patients. You know that it might be much more easier to recruit 100 patients compared to 200 patients in the design which I mentioned. But the problem is you cannot do crossover designs everywhere. The trial design, whether it's a parallel arm trial or whether it is a crossover trial, depends on the disease condition you are studying, and it depends on the research question you are going to address. So crossover trials are best suited in chronic stable conditions. For example, bronchial asthma, patient having chronic pain syndromes. In these scenarios, the disease is not going to change rapidly over a period of time. And again, this is not suited in scenarios where there is a treatment which brings about a definitive cure. For example, asthma, you know that there is nothing which cures asthma. What you can do the common situations in which you see crossover trial is pharmacokinetic studies and pharmacodynamic studies, and mostly bioequivalence designs. And I will not be dealing with the bioequivalence designs anyway. Now we are coming to questions. I need your responses. I have given 4 clinical scenarios, and I need to know in which all clinical situations a crossover trial is appropriate. Can I get a few responses here? Sorry. Okay, let us take each situation. Effect of paricalcitrol on carotid intima medial thickness in CKD. So is it appropriate to consider this for a crossover design? Perhaps not, because, sorry, it's okay. So carotid intima medial thickness. Now the change in carotid intima medial thickness, first of all, any changes in carotid intima medial thickness needs quite a lot of time. And that whatever changes, whether it is an increase or decrease, this might not be reversible over a washout period. So this sort of situations in which there is a permanent change and the change takes quite a lot of time, it is always better to do it as a parallel arm trial. Now, effect of endothelial dysfunction in response to allopurinol with CKD. So the clinical situation is really vague. Let us see if I am using a flow-mediated vasodilatation as an index of endothelial function. Very well, this can be done in a crossover design. You give allopurinol and you know that you don't really need to give allopurinol for a longer duration. Say a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks would be sufficient. Assess the endothelial dysfunction and have a sufficient washout period for allopurinol to go off and give a placebo and reassess. So B, it is possible to have as a crossover design as well as a parallel arm design. And C, effect of renal blood flow in response to neprilysin inhibition. Again, a crossover design is very well feasible because you are not going to look at the long-term effects. You just want to see the renal blood flow, and this could be attained by optimizing treatment for a couple of days or a weeks. And again, this question can be answered by a parallel arm trial as well. Now, effect of uric acid lowering in CKD progression. Obviously, there is no question of a crossover design here, because you are going to look at the changes in GFR over a period of time. So it is the research question which decides. It is the clinical situation which decides. It is the disease condition which decides whether a crossover trial is appropriate. And there are certain scenarios in which a crossover design is the most appropriate design, and there are certain scenarios in which you can do the same, you can address the same question with a crossover design as well as a parallel arm design. Again, in that situation, a crossover design might be beneficial because it is going to save the cost quite a lot. Now, I don't know, I'm not able to move my screen. Yeah, this is the simplest crossover design, the AB or BA design, which I had shown before. There will be 2 periods. This is called the periods. Okay, this is called the period where 2 groups receive both the intervention and the rows are called as the sequence. Okay, now there are a few things which you should be aware while dealing with crossover trials. One is something which is called a uniform design. So a design can be uniform within periods and uniform within sequence. Uniform within period means for each given period, whatever intervention you are going to give, all the patients group, both the interventions which you are planning to give will be received by patients. For example, in this, there are 4 periods, and every period patient receives drug A as well as drug B. So this is called uniform periods. And if you see the sequence, the number of times the patient has received drug A and drug B are equal. So when the number of times the patient has received the interventions are equal, you call it as a uniform sequence. Now, I think Aniket, can you mute?
Yes, ma'am. I've muted. Please.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm able to hear some background noise.
Yes, ma'am. I have muted that.
Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, now if you see here again, there are 3 periods, and each period the patient is receiving antihypertensive A and B. So this is uniform by period. Now when we look at the sequence, the number of time antihypertensive A was received is 2 times, whereas a B has been received only once. So this study design is uniform within periods, but it is not uniform in sequences. Now, there could be much more complex designs also. Now, this is something called a Latin square design. And if you see, the pattern is pretty evident. Each intervention appears only once, whether it is row-wise or column-wise. But the problem with this sort of Latin square design is, if you look carefully, see, B succeeds A once in the top column and it also succeeds A in the bottom column. Similarly, if you see in the 4x4 design, again, there is B succeeding A in top column and this column and this column. So this means that, and if you see, this holds same for other interventions as well. So it means that one intervention succeeds another intervention in more than one column. So it is very well possible that the drug A can affect the behavior of drug B. So if it does not want this to happen, you have to go for something like this. See, if you see, there is an internal rearrangement, and again one intervention is received only once. The number of times each intervention has been received in a sequence is only once, and this is rearranged in such a way that no intervention precedes a previous intervention by more than one time. If you take B, A precedes B only once, and take D, A precedes D only once. So this sort of design is called a balanced design. So this sort of sequences, they are uniform within periods, uniform within sequences, but the initial two designs are unbalanced because one intervention precedes another intervention more than one times. This is a uniform design. This is a uniform by period, uniform by sequence, and it is also balanced. Now, let us come to the basic design of a crossover trial. Let us say there is two groups. The first group receives the drug in the order A and B, and the second group receives the drug in the order B and A. Now, let us say the antihypertensive A reduces the blood pressure by 10 millimeters of mercury, and the antihypertensive B reduces the blood pressure by 5 millimeters of mercury. So, whichever sequence we give, and even if we reverse the period, the actual difference between antihypertensive A and B should be 5 millimeters of mercury. So, if we take the period sequence 1, the difference should be 5 millimeters of mercury. If we take the second sequence, that is a BA sequence, again, the difference should be 5 millimeters of mercury. So, practically means that if we add this 5 plus 5, 10 divided by 2, the average difference during the both sequences is 5 millimeters of mercury, and the difference during the individual sequences also should be equal. But practically, most of the time, we are not going to see this. We will see that the sequence AB, the difference might be different compared to the sequence BA. And there are a couple of factors which contributes to these differences. So, you might find that the sequence AB gives a different figure and sequence BA gives a different figure. Actually, the figures should be same because you are testing the same drug. The only difference is the order in which you are testing is different. So these are the reasons which accounts for the differences in the crossovers. So I will take it one by one. Let us say first is period effect. If we recall, there is an initial period, then there is a washout period, and then there is a second period in which the interventions are reversed in an ABBA design. So what might happen is things might change over a period of time. Sometimes subjects might do better in the subsequent period. It is also possible that they might do worse also. And it means that something has changed and it has nothing to do with the treatment. And it possibly reflects the trends over time. So I'm just trying to make you understand with the trial data set. Let us say there is a study where we are testing two antihypertensive agents, A and B, and there are 10 patients. The first 5 patients will receive it in the AB sequence, and the next 5 patients will receive it in the BA sequence. This is the baseline blood pressure. And period 1, the first 5 patients has received A, and the second 5 patients, 6 to 10, has received B. The order has been reversed in period 2, and there is a washout period. Now, this is the basic data. And if the response does not change over time, the response you get for A in period 1 and the response you get for A in period 2 should be same. So, which means similarly, the response you get for B in period 1 and this should be same. So, this means that if you add up all the responses you got in period 1 and if you add up all the response you got in period 2, they should be equal. Here I have added up all the responses in period 2 and this is the mean, that is 134 with a standard deviation of 12. And in period 2, 131 is the mean with a standard deviation of 6. And there is a 3 millimeter difference. Now what we need to see is whether this 3 millimeter difference is a random error or is it because of the period. So I have compared the means in period 1 with the period 2 and there is no significant differences in the mean. This means that there is no period effect noticed in this experiment. And there is another way of doing it. And again, you are going to get the same results. So this is in the 4th column, what I have added is a crossover difference. This simply is the difference between the observations noticed in period 1 and period 2. So here the sequence is AB and what has happened here, only the sequence has been reversed. So the sum of measurements here in AB sequence and the sum of these differences in BA sequence should be equal. So here the differences in AB sequence is 14.2 millimeters of mercury and the difference in BA sequence is 8.6 millimeters of mercury. Now, if you want to see how much is the difference in blood pressure because of the period effect, you have to add this and then divide by 2. Why this 2 comes? Here, there are 20 observations from 10 patients. So essentially dividing by 2, we are dividing it into the observations among 10 patients. And again, here you are going to see a 3 millimeter difference. So I have compared the mean of the crossover differences between AB sequence and BA sequence and there is no significant difference. So this again, the same conclusion, there is no period effect in this crossover trial. Now, sometimes a slightly complicated thing can happen. There could be a treatment by period interaction. So it just means that the effect of treatment was not same in different period and something which has happened during a period study period has influenced the way in which the patient responds to the treatment. So I will tell you with an example, it might be much more easier to understand this. Let us say there are 2 periods in my study and let us say I recruited almost all patients in period 1 in the same time. Let us say they got recruited in the month of May. And the second period recruitment happened mostly in the month of November. In my place, May is peak summer season. There won't be any social functions and all. Whereas November is a season for festivities. You will have a lot of social functions, marriages and other things. People have a tendency to eat out and probably the salt restriction is not going to be implemented that much in this period. So it is possible that because the salt restriction was very lax, I might have got a higher blood pressure readings in November compared to May. So this means that the treatment has been influenced by the time of entry of the individual into the study. Then sometimes these are other interactions which cannot be accounted for in a BA-AB design because one is patient by treatment interaction. Sometimes the individual response might be slightly different. You give antihypertensive to, you might find some in your clinical practice, there are patients who might not respond well to any of the antihypertensive drug. So this is an individual response. There is something in the body of that particular patient which makes a slightly difference. Asthmatics, some of the asthmatics, they won't respond to any type of inhalational agents. patients with pain, they won't respond to any of the analgesic medications. So this is very different to identify this patient by treatment interaction in a two-period, two-sequence trial, that is an ABBA trial. But when you have multiple arms, sometimes you might be able to see this response. Then sometimes there is another interaction. The patient can interact with the period. For example, if the patients are recruited over a long period of time, in the previous example, the salt manipulating the blood pressure response, all the patients were recruited in a somewhat similar time. But let us say in another scenario, these patients are recruited over an year. And it would be possible that if a patient is recruited in the summer months where there are no social functions, he might be more compliant to the salt. And if the same patient, had he been recruited in the winter months where social functions are more, he would have responded in a different way. Now, the most important thing is the carryover effects. So carryover effects is something which might distort your study in a totally different way. So again, this is the same slide which I have shown you some time back. Let us say there's an antihypertensive A, which is destined to reduce the blood pressure by 10 millimeter, and another antihypertensive B, which is destined to reduce the blood pressure by 5 millimeter. It is very well possible that this antihypertensive A persists in the system for some time, and antihypertensive B also might persist in the system for some time, and they might persist to different levels. And if these drugs which were given in the initial period persist in the system for quite some time, instead of getting a 5 millimeter reading here, we are going to get a slightly higher difference, because the effect is going to be a combined effect of B with whatever leftover effect of antihypertensive A. So sometimes it is possible that both antihypertensive A and B persist in the system, and they might affect the results in the subsequent periods. So let us say both A and B are having carryover effects. So okay, so this is actually A and B having different same carryover effects. For example, drug A you have given, you got the supposed measurement 10 millimeters of mercury, and when B is given first, you are getting the actual measurement, actual difference 5 millimeter of mercury. Let us say that drug A and drug B has carryover effects which persist into the second period. So what will happen when A is given for a second time? There is some effect of B which is persisting. So A, which was supposed to reduce the blood pressure by 10 millimeter of mercury, instead of the 10 millimeter mercury, we are getting a higher reading, say 13. Then part of this 13, the extra 3 might be contributed by the effect of drug B. Now, in this scenario here, B was given second. A is having some persistent effect. So the actual response here was supposed to be 5 millimeters of mercury. Because A is persisting in the system for some time, a part of the effect of A is also carried over, and we end up getting 8 millimeters of mercury as the difference. But here this is not going to be that much problematic, because in this scenario, the carryover difference, here drug A versus drug B, it is 5 millimeters of mercury. And here also drug A versus drug B, that's 13 minus 18, it is again 5 millimeters of mercury. So when A and B have the similar carryover effects, when A and B are having similar carryover effects, so the differences are not going to be different, but we might have a slightly distorted picture of the absolute drug efficacy, but it is not going to affect your the differences between the two arms in a gross manner. But let us see the another scenario where only drug A is having a carryover effect. So drug A, in the initial part, A given first, it reduces 10 millimeter as expected, and the B is given first, it reduces by 5 millimeter as expected. Now B does not have a carryover effect. When A is given for a second time, again A produces the same 10 millimeter differences, but whereas drug A has a carryover effect which is carried over when B is given second, resulting in a slightly different value. So this is an asymmetric carryover effect, and this might be pretty troublesome. Now, how to avoid carryover effects? The best way to avoid carryover effects is to ensure sufficient time has passed between administration of two drugs. So you include a sufficiently long washout period to ensure that the antihypertensive A and B has disappeared from the system by the time you are going to reverse the interventions. And this washout period can be active or passive. An active washout period is something in which you give a placebo, whereas a passive washout period is somewhere you don't give a placebo. And the minimum recommended washout period is 5 half-lives or more should have passed between the two treatment periods. Now, there are ways to assess the carryover effect also. So we give a sufficient washout period, but still it might be possible that the drug has changed the response in some other way. For example, if your drug A or drug B has some enzyme induction properties, it might affect the way the subsequent drug is given in the subsequent period. So even if we encounter a long washout period, we always need to look into the carryover effects. So the best way to looking into the carryover effect is if there is no carryover effect, after the period 1, the blood pressures might come back to the baseline levels. So you have to compare the pressures in the baseline level as well as the washout. So this is the mean blood pressures in the baseline. It is 146 millimeters of mercury, and in the washout period, this is 145. And there's no difference between the blood pressures. But most of the time, you might not have the value in the washout period. So there might be a baseline value, there might be a value in period 1, and there might be a value in period 2. So again, there is a way to look into the carryover differences. Instead, in that period differences, we were looking into the differences between period 1 and period 2. Here, to see for carryover effects, we are adding the measurements in period 1 plus period 2. So this column, I have added up all the measurements in period 1 and period 2. This is in the AB sequence and this is in the BA sequence. The sum of measurements in the AB sequence and BA sequence will be same if there is no carryover effects. So here the mean value is 270 with a standard deviation of 70. And here in the BA sequence, the mean sum is 258 with a standard deviation of 1.5 millimeters of mercury. The values appear somewhat higher, but on testing, there was, sorry. So the values appear somewhat higher, but on testing, there is no significant difference between the mean, again meaning that there is no carryover effect. So these were the potential problems which would account for the differences in the sequences. So period effects we can deal with, period by treatment effects also can be dealt with, and carryover effects can be dealt with in a simple ABBA design. But patient by treatment interactions and patient by period interactions cannot be dealt with. So the previous way of analyzing the data, that is a somewhat older approach. And if you see, that involves multiple testing. First, you need to see the period effects, then you need to see the carryover effects, and then you need to analyze the data. The problem is this multiple testing is no longer recommended. So why I just showed it is to make you understand the basic concepts of a carryover design, crossover design, and where things can go wrong. Now the problem is, in the previous study, if I am testing and if I find that there is a period effect and there is a carryover effect, then obviously my data is not going to be valid. Now, what are the options in such a scenario? The previous option was, one is you would actually remove the second half. The second period data you will completely remove and you will analyze the only first period data. Now, the problem with the first period data is you are essentially converting a crossover trial into a parallel arm trial. But of course, I told the sample sizes are going to be much more lower. So you are inflating the alpha error as well as the beta error. So this approach is not being recommended, this sort of multiple testing. And a slightly different approach is being recommended now, which I will come into later. Now, let us see the treatment effect. And again, continuing with what I was talking. So if there is no period effect, if there is no crossover effect, you can simply compare the blood pressure measurements between treatment A and treatment B by a paired t-test. So this I have just reorganized the data. This is the blood pressure during the treatment with A, and this is the blood pressure during treatment with B. And what you need to do is you do a paired test. Treatment A is associated with a blood pressure of 137, that's the mean values, whereas treatment B, the mean values is 126, and the differences is 11.3 millimeters of mercury with a standard deviation of 6.5, and the p-value is significant. You can get the same thing by adding up the crossover differences and taking the average. The AB sequence, it was 14.2 and the BS sequence was 8.6. Just add it and take the average. That's going to be 11.4 millimeters of mercury. Now, now it might be very clear that even though this is a within subjects design, a simple paired t-test to compare the effects, compare the outcomes might not be sufficient. In the period 1, what we are getting is a mean effect of A plus a period effect, and there might be a period by treatment interaction. Similarly, when in the period 1 for the drug B, we are getting the mean effect of B plus a period effect and a period by treatment interaction. And in period 2, in addition to this effects, we are having a carryover effect of drug A. Here we are going to have a carryover effect of drug B. So now, if there is no period effect, no carryover effect, or not period by treatment interaction, the analysis plan is pretty clear. Just use a paired t-test. But the problem is, in spite of our best efforts, all these interactions can still happen, and your analysis plan has to account for these differences. So the older way which I showed, I demonstrated, was the older recommendations. Do multiple testing, and finally, if nothing is there, go and compare the treatment effect. But that is not the preferred approach now. Now I'm coming to the sample sizes in crossover trial. So here we are getting 2 responses from each participant. So the minimum expected reduction in sample size in crossover trial is around 50%. But in actual practice, you might get more because we are comparing the patient, and the within patient variances are much more smaller when compared to the between patient variances. I will try to do this with an example. I know that this is a little bit of jargon and some of you might be confused. So I will do this with the help of an example. Okay. What we want in crossover trial is an alpha error. Again, like in parallel arm trials, we don't really have much choices. You have to fix the alpha error at 0.05 or 0.01. And again, beta error, not much of choices, either 0.8 or 0.1. And the delta in a parallel arm trial is the observed difference in means with the pooled standard deviation. Whereas in a crossover trial, this is within patient standard deviation. The between patient standard deviation is going to be much more higher when compared to the, the within patient standard deviation is much more smaller when compared to the between patient standard deviation, and that is what which reduces the sample size in a crossover trial. So I'm just trying to calculate how much is the treatment. This is actually the difference which I got from the previous design. Now I am trying to find the sample size in 2 ways. The same differences applied in a parallel arm trial and the same differences applied in a crossover trial. If you recall, the treatment A, the mean blood pressure difference, the mean blood pressure was 137, and in treatment B, it was 126. And this were the standard deviations. Now, the pooled standard deviation is 9 millimeters of mercury. Now, I'm going to do this at an alpha of 0.05 and a beta of okay, so here actually the beta is 0.9. There is a typographic error. Now, at an alpha of 5% and a beta of 0.9, and to see the mean difference, to demonstrate a difference of 137 minus 26, that is 11 millimeter of mercury with a standard deviation of 9, I need 15 patients in each arm. The total number of patients is 30. And let us see if we want to do the same thing in a crossover trial. So there are multiple formulas for analyzing the sample size in crossover trials, but unfortunately I couldn't find an online calculator. So what I'm focusing here is how the sample size gets saved in a crossover trial. So again, there are multiple formulas for this. Yeah. So this is a formula which actually shows you how the sample size gets saved between a crossover and a parallel trial. So this is the expected reduction in sample size. So here sigma S is the between subject variance and sigma E is the within subject variance. So the within subject variance was 6.5, whereas the between subject variance here was 9. Now, when we substitute these things in this formula, you're coming to a figure of 5.8. So, if you want to see 11 millimeter of difference between drug A and drug B in a crossover trial, the number of subjects required is 6 as against a total number of 30 in the parallel arm trial. Now, the statistical analysis plan is definitely much more complex in a crossover design compared to a parallel arm design. So you have to compare. What you need to keep in mind is you need to compare the within patient differences. If there is no carryover effects or if there is no period effects, you can use a paired t-test. But the problem is the paired t-test does not have much value when there is a period effect or a carryover effect. So now the recommended way of doing a data analysis in a crossover trial is by a repeated measures of ANOVA, where you can add this treatment and period as a within factor difference, within subject difference, and the sequence as a between subject difference. It is a slightly complex analysis, and probably people who are not familiar with the longitudinal data might not be familiar with this concept also. So that is why I'm not showing the data analysis part, because it might end up confusing you rather than enlightening you. And again, categorical data, again, it is a categorical data is measured with a paired t-test, that is McNemar's test. But McNemar's test, the problem is it doesn't take into account the period effect. So the recommended test is a Mainland-Gard test. There's another test called Prescott test also. And if it's an ordinal data, it should be analyzed using a Wilcoxon-Ransom test. The problem, there are potential disadvantages. I told you about all the interactions between the crossover design. And another problem is each individual has to undergo multiple testing. In the simple ABBA design, each individual has to undergo at least 2 testing. And because of this multiple testing, there will be quite a lot of attrition. And when there is significant attrition, it is going to affect the validity of the results, because we are looking into the within patient variances rather than the between patient variances. And as I told, the statistical analysis is going to be complex. It is beyond the purview of a session like this, because the output is going to be very complex and the interpretation is also going to be equally complex. If somebody is interested in knowing how you want to analyze a crossover design with an RM ANOVA, I would be happy to help. You can contact me over email. I will be able to guide you personally. But showing the analysis plan before a slightly heterogeneous audience probably might create more confusion rather than benefit. So this is what I have to say for the day. And is there any questions? Okay, I think there are a few questions.
Yes, sir. Actually, I have lost the questions in the chat because I was disconnected.
Okay, okay.
Sir,
No, I can see. No, there are not much of questions.
Yes.
There are only a few questions. I think I'm just trying to open the chat. I can see it, but I'm just trying to. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, I think I lost the chat.
Shall I read them for you, ma'am?
Yeah. I think it's better. I don't know. I'm not able to find out the chat.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've got the questions.
Yeah.
So the first one is the number of crossovers has to be decided a priori. We can crossover if the treatment fails, then we cannot decide the number a priori.
Okay, so what I hope I didn't really understand the question. So
even I'm not clear. Dr.
Yeah.
Preeta Kumar,
No.
can you unmute? and ask what you wanted exactly?
No, so let me put it this way. So what you wanted to ask is, can we keep on increasing the number of crossover periods depending on the results? No, that is not the recommended one. We have to decide it prior, and you are not going to change depending on the results. For example, you wanted 4 crossover periods. You have to go ahead with the 4 crossover periods. You cannot add a 5th or 6th if the results are not going in the direction you expected.
Yeah, so sorry, I couldn't unmute earlier. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, I can
Yes,
hear
Yeah.
you.
So what I was asking was, for example, I am working in the neonatal ICU.
Yeah.
So we have, to do sometimes a crossover trial. Like suppose we have children in respiratory failure, and then we decide to put them on conventional ventilation versus high frequency. And then if they fail high frequency, then we have the option of going back to conventional. And if a conventional fails, we can go to high frequency. But now all of them may not need it. Can we do a trial like that?
No, I don't really think that this is an appropriate design for a crossover trial. First of all, the most important thing is this should be a stable condition. And in a condition where you expect the disease to escalate or de-escalate rapidly is not a scenario for crossover trial. So I don't really think.
Then we can just only observe them, right? It will become observational study.
Yeah. I think actually, see,
Yeah.
in a scenario where life is at stake, that is not a situation where you should do a randomized control trial. There are some adaptive designs also, like which actually I have not dealt in the situation. Like there are adaptive designs which can be used in critical care situations, but that is actually not the purview of this series. And of
So
course,
it won't be called a crossover trial, right? Because see, we have studies like this we have a lot of studies of crossover of conventional and HFO because both have not been proven to be better than the other. So people have done it.
No, see, first of all, you need to randomize the participants. So, but what I understood is from your question, there might be patients who will be eligible for some sort of therapy. You are one type of oxygen therapy. Sorry, I didn't get what exactly you are high frequency. What is HFO?
It's a type
so
of ventilator.
so high frequency ventilator ventilates you in a different way.
Okay.
And conventional,
so
the mechanism is different.
So it is basically you want to assign patients to 2 ventilator strategies. Now, if you are doing a crossover trial, first you have to randomize the patients and you have to decide in which sequence they are going to do. But what I understood is you have an eligibility criteria which makes some people eligible for one ventilation strategy and some other people eligible for another ventilation strategy. If that doesn't work, you want to switch over. This is not the situation for a randomized crossover trial. You are just crossing over the treatment strategies, but you can't call it as a randomized crossover trial.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's another question from Dr. Anitha, which says, do we have a combination non-uniform design equal to non-uniform period but uniform sequence?
You can have any permutation and combination, but the problem is the number of periods increases, the number of sequences. You can have a totally non-uniform design also, but the analysis plan is going to be much more complex.
Then a question from Dr. Radhika, which asks, how is pooled standard deviation calculated and what is its significance?
Okay. In a parallel arm trial, we are going to get the standard deviation for intervention and we are going to get the standard deviation for control. Now, we are going to combine the responses in both groups and we are going to find the standard deviation. That is a pooled standard deviation. So, similarly, in a crossover trial, what we are going to do, we are going to see the differences between the 2 sequences, 2 drugs, okay, fine, and you're going to combine it. So you need the pooled standard deviation for sample size calculations. It is not the individual standard deviation we use for sample size calculation.
I think that comes to the end of the questions. So back to Aniket and Dr. Rajapurkar.
Thank you very much, Priyamvada, for this excellent presentation as expected and as usual. You made a difficult trial design look simple. But my advice to all who ultimately want to plan to do such a study it's a good idea to contact and take advice before you start doing the study to a trial specialist who would tell you what are the problems in your design or your plan before you embark on it. Otherwise, you will embark on it and then analyzing the data or drawing some conclusions out of after spending time, money, effort, all that would lead to a lot of heartburn. So I would suggest if anybody is going to get into such complicated trial designs, then you should take a consultation a priori from people who are good at designing trials. Now, just because we read a lot of these trials doesn't mean we will be able to design them for our requirement. So each time one must ask whether a trial design is appropriate at all or not, and then also plan with the help of your trialist and statistician whether the design you have ultimately agreed to is the thing which is going to answer your questions. Because you may ultimately find that your trial design does not answer your questions. Then what is the point? That is what is my comment on it.
Can I also say
Yes,
that the
please.
question which Madam was answering,
Hmm.
in that the patient should be eligible for both the conditions. Only then you can decide about the crossover design. In a neonatal intensive care unit, you cannot afford to do that. So the concept is that the inclusion criteria has to be very clear, and both the patients should be eligible at the entry point for both the treatment
Yeah,
strategy.
ma'am, they are eligible for both. So
No,
in a regular NICU, this patient would
no,
be
no, no,
eligible for either. Yeah.
no. The question which you said that if they fail to do that, then send it to the other treatment strategy. That is not the way to do a crossover design.
Right. But then we have to
What
analyze them,
Dr.
no? Anyway.
Priyambada, yeah,
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah.
Yes.
No, that's what I'm saying, no? That, it shouldn't be an alternate the way she said that if they fail on one, then should be sent to the second one. This is not the way to do a crossover design. So, including deciding about the inclusion criteria at the outset is a must before you start with the crossover. This is not an alternate, this or that condition for which you can do a crossover design in an emergency situation. Sorry,
Madam,
I don't agree with that. So that you
Madam,
also said so. Yeah.
Madam, thank you very much for your comments. They have always been constructive. But if any of the participants want to discuss this a bit more in detail, my recommendation is that contact Priyambada, and if you don't have her email, ask me. I will be happy to supply it. I'm sure Priyambada won't object to that.
No, sir, definitely. Because this crossover is slightly complex, and probably the number of crossover trials published in nephrology is very minimal. I could remember reading only one crossover trial in the last 4 or 5 years in a good journal. So it is as slow. So definitely people are not going to be familiar with the concept also.
I will forward the study. Yeah, I will forward the study I'm talking about, which is it's already
Please.
published around 8 to 10
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Please forward this study.
Yeah.
I'll be
Sure,
happy
sure.
to give my inputs.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, all of you again. And with this, we come to the conclusion of this workshop, both the basic and the advanced part. I want to profusely thank all the speakers on behalf of the organizing team. And I want to congratulate and thank all my team without whose help and great support, this would not have been possible. And I ask for suggestions for next year's workshop as the main heading topic to conduct another workshop sometime next year. It should be not something which is a common one and should be beneficial to all is our requirement. So your suggestions can be sent to me anytime during the next 2-3 months. And I'm sure all my organizing team would be happy to look at all those and decide on to the next year's workshop. Thank you.
Sir, can I say something? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Preeta Joshi and Dr. Vinay Joshi. Both of us have been attending. We are husband and wife, as well as intensivists at Ambani Hospital. So I want to really thank you for letting us be part of this nephrology group. And we really enjoyed because it brought us back to the epidemiology courses we had done before. So I thank you for letting us be part of this group. Thank you so much. It was an amazing course.
Well, in nephrology, we have never been too exclusive. We like to be inclusive rather than exclusive.
Thank you, sir.
Nephrology is, many people have said that is a greater intensive part of the internal medicine itself. So if you're a nephrologist, you are a good internal medicine person. Otherwise, it would not be possible to be a good nephrologist. So we are inclusive. Anyway, thank you once again, and we will stop here.
Sir, can I say something? I'm Narayan Prasad, sir.
Sure. Of course, you're most welcome. Yeah.
Just to respond about the crossover trial, I have done one crossover trial of sildenafil erectile dysfunction renal transplant recipient. That has been published in American Journal of Kidney Disease in 2005. Very early, we have done that crossover trial. But the same thing, this crossover effect, that was the major query from the journal. And one of the reviewer has very strong objections on this. And during that period of the time, since I was the resident at that point of time, I was not knowing too much about how to take care of this crossover effect. So during that period of the time, what happened? So just I have given the sildenafil, I have given a very silly kind of explanation that sildenafil has the only half-life of 1.5 hours kind of things, and we have given the washout period for the 2 weeks, so there would be an unlikely chance of the crossover effect. So that kind of the silly things which we have done, but later on when we came into the depth, there was many methods to take care of this crossover effect. So really a crossover trial, particularly randomized control trial, is difficult to do. And Dr. Priyamda has done very extremely good job today explaining everything, including this crossover effect. So I would like to thank Priyamda for this excellent overview of the crossover trial. And on behalf of Indian Society of Nephrology, I would like to thank everyone, and particularly Professor Mohan Raja Purkar sir and the entire team for this excellent scientific deliberation, which has been done over the last 2-3 months. So thank you everyone, sir. That's why I was trying to tell you one crossover trial. That was my experience during my residency period.
Yeah. So, sir, I would congratulate you for trying a crossover trial that much early. So that is something which actually, like, I'm not really confident to try a crossover trial. So
that has been published in American Journal of Kidney Disease at that point. There was very strong review. Then, but difficulty was there in taking care of the crossover effect. That has been put that point of time. I was not aware during that period of the time how to take care of this crossover.
Probably the analysis plan. See, I hope actually while you were doing, probably the multi-stage analysis was in practice, and now probably it is somewhat easier with the use of repeated measures ANOVA. We can actually check for the interaction. So this would not have been difficult if you are doing it now, convincing the reviewer regarding the crossover effect.
Now we are aware a little bit more doing, but during that period of time, it was very difficult for me to understand all these effects.
Narayan, this is not a unique experience you have. All of us who have published go through these hitches. We, sometimes in the early part of our scientific career, we don't even understand what the reviewer is asking.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So that's all, sir, from my side, sir. Over to you, sir.
Anybody else
Thank you.
has anything to say? Please feel free. If there are no more comments, shall I end the meeting here now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.